Instead of taking up with in quest of God, we thought it would be better if we go through the contents of the vision for this month, because it contains nothing but devotion. We will be able to understand better that Papa's narrative in quest of God if we understand more and more about devotion. Normally, when you say bhakti or devotion, it will be centered on an Ishtadevata or a deity. But here in Papa's case, no particular Ishtadevata or deity is there. Mataji clarifies it. Papa has looked at the whole Saguna Swarup as one entity. The entire creation, the all-pervading reality as one entity, and also covered the Nirguna Swarup.
They are saying something. Are you able to hear? They are telling they are not able to hear. Leena, you are able to hear?
Yes. Not very clear. I'm able to hear.
Not very clear. Kya hua?
Some says it is very clear. Some says not.
Not clear.
Hari Om, you say Swamiji, Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Low voice, probably low voice.
Low voice.
No, it sounds like an echo actually. It's not a low voice. It sounds like an echo.
Mic, no, don't keep near us.
Hari Om. Hari Om.
Is it clear?
Yeah, better.
Better.
It is much better. Yes.
I think this mic.
Now it's clear. Now it's clear.
Quite clear. Today we thought we would take up the vision for the month of May because it is exclusively dwelling upon the bhakti aspect, the devotional aspect. Why did he prompt us? When we start thinking, we come to know that the whole of approach of Papa is based on devotion only. Though at many a times or in many of his poems, articles, he talks about the highest Vedanta, as the Nirguna Nirakara Swarup. But in his case, we should know, as Mataji clarified it, Papa has looked at the whole Saguna Swarup as one entity and also covered Nirguna Swarup. So normally when we say bhakti, it is centered on a particular deity, Ishtadevata, or a particular form of a guru. But here no, covers the whole thing. With this understanding, when we go through the In Quest of God, probably we may be able to understand it better. Many of his soliloquy, many of his dialogue with Papa will become clearer and clearer to us. He is always viewing it as the cosmic soul, not as the individual soul. The more we try to understand Papa, his approach, the more will be the benefit we will be deriving. You will all be getting the monthly magazine, Vision. So when you get it, you can go through it, but now we will try to go through it in detail. The editorial says, the path of devotion or bhakti is considered to be the safest for aspirants because it stands for expansion of the love circle and not abdicating anything. The moment we hear about Jnana Yoga, normally we will all think about renunciation, and we immediately, our mind will say, this is not for us. So here there is no abdication, there is no renunciation. It is only an expansion of the love circle. Bhakti or devotion, the question of renunciation does not figure there with the tone of rigidity as is normally understood. Bhakti or devotion is of two kinds. The more common is ceremonial and ritualistic method of expressing our devotion through elaborate external worship. When we go to the temple, or even to the ashram, it is centered on an individual. This type of bhakti has always a tinge of self-seeking through the meticulous following of the injunctions of the scriptures regarding puja. But the bhakti that crowns us with liberation is Nishkama Bhakti. We don't ask anything. Our only prayer is that you are there within me and within everybody. Make me please aware of it. Then slowly I will realize that you are making me to think, you are making me to talk, you are making me to enjoy, you are making me to suffer for reasons known to you. I will not complain. Here, even if something is offered by the Lord, it will not be accepted. Because what the devotee wants is nothing but God. He realizes that all created things are temporary, transitory, subject to decay and dissolution. Normally we pray for this, we pray for that, After some time, again it will be there in some other form. So now, having understood this, we will not ask anything, just to make us aware that you are within me. Now only I feel I am there. That is why the whole problem comes. Make me aware that you are within me. Bas, that is enough. Whatever you want to do, you do through me. Because he realizes that all created things are temporary, transitory, subject to decay and dissolution. They are perishable and imperfect. Though they are useful for that moment, they can become a diversion, a bondage, a net, a nuisance, and a prolific sense of sorrow. Devotion to God does not consist merely in talking and discoursing about Him. It is an experience of intimate contact and union with Him. Virat Papa says, if you want to enjoy real bliss and peace, you should cultivate devotion for God. Let God be your all in all. Your one and only aim or ambition in life should be to realize Him. God wants you to be His simple, trusting, loving child. Worldly attainments like wealth, learning, position do not count at all. God looks at your heart. If He finds you sincere, guileless and pure, He becomes yours. If you are sympathetic to the distressed, kind towards all creatures, forgiving in your nature, patient and self-sacrificing, God bathes you in the radiance of His grace. In all humility, approach Him in your heart, for there He dwells, the master and mother of your soul and life. So He is seated in our heart. Not the biological, heart is the seat of feelings. Acme of Bhakti. When we love Him, our whole mind will be filled with Him, and there will be no other thought intruding. There is dispassion towards everything else. Gradually, this attitude will also pave the way to experience everything as a form of God. Thus, the love circle keeps on expanding with the God dimension behind it. Papa was in Bangalore. He was undergoing the disciplines as God prompted him from within, and he was in Bangalore only. So when God decided that he should also move outside so that he can find Him everywhere, he motivated him to take the plunge on 27th December 1922. So not localizing, that is important. Let us see what Papa says on Acme of Bhakti. Bhakti is the adoration of the Supreme Lord of the universe beyond everything else in the world. Exclusive. The one-pointed adoration makes the devotee keep his mind ever engaged in the remembrance and contemplation of the Lord. The divine idea seizes his mind to such an extent that the most attractive objects of life cease to fascinate him. So these are some of the clues Papa is giving to us. Whether the real bhakti is welling up in our hearts, automatically the dispassion develops in our mind. Dispassion toward the transitory world. He talks, laughs, and often weeps in his madness of the Lord. As he progresses on the path of devotion, he is weaned away from the petty and transient pleasures of the sense and remains, as it were, dead to them. His one passion is to see God, to know God, and to be entirely merged in God. His one passion is to see God, to know God, and be entirely merged in God. So as a result of this devotion, in the first place, the devotee is possessed with an intense vairagya. That is a steady and fixed dispassion toward the evanescent objects in the world. The intensity of his vairagya depends upon the intensity of his devotion to his Lord. It is not that we are renouncing. It drops off, our attachment, our priorities, our preferences for everything else drops off by itself. Just like when we were playing with a teddy bear in our childhood days, when we grew old, we did not renounce it. It dropped off by itself. So when we shift our priority to Him, Papa says, automatically everything gets dropped off by itself. A devotion which is weak and interrupted cannot merely turn the mind away from the external world. Devotion must therefore be a dedication of all the powers of the mind and heart for the exclusive meditation and love for the Lord. That is why we find in Quest of God, what an amount of self-denial he did. Nobody told him that he should not eat. Nobody told him that he should not sleep on the bed. When his priority got shifted, he knew if he eats more, he may sleep. At that time, he may not be able to remember him. So the self-denial came by itself, so that he will be able to more and more concentrate on him, dwell on God. Devotion as rightly divided is of two kinds, the lower and the higher. In the lower form of devotion, the devotee looks for guidance and concentration from outside and primarily attaches himself to the society of saints who have realized fully the greatness and glory of the Lord. To keep himself pure in thought, word and deed, he controls all the forces that are working in his physical and psychic being and adjusts the conduct of his life so as to free himself from the desires of his mind. Mainly, he will have recourse to three kinds of sadhana: satsang, solitude, and sattvic diet. Satsang, solitude, and sattvic diet. You will be able to understand better in Quest of God. If we go through these words and try to assimilate or absorb the theme contained in these words, he will have recourse to three kinds of sadhana: satsang, solitude, sattvic diet. How does the devotee now try to tune his mind in a continuous symphony with the Lord? It must be admitted that every remembrance signifies bringing into the mind the names and qualities of the person or object remembered. A prolonged remembrance means a sustained fixity of the thought on the name and attributes of the person or object. For the devotee, the Lord becomes the one great object of ceaseless remembrance, which is attained by an unbroken repetition of his sweet and all-powerful name, and bringing at the same time into the mind his sublime glories and attributes. So, chanting of the name goes along with dwelling on the attributes. Somebody can go and request them now to change your page. So the remembrance of the Lord is attained by an unbroken repetition of His sweet and all-powerful name, and bringing at the same time into the mind His sublime glories and attributes. As the devotee advances on the spiritual path, he transcends the tamo and rajoguna of nature and gets firmly seated in sattva-guna. The lower form of bhakti leads the devotee to this most necessary step. Now commences the higher aspect of devotion. Sattva-guna entitles the devotee to the grace of the Lord or a saint, and through this grace, he is lifted beyond all gunas and comes, so to say, face to face with the immortal and all blissful Atman, whom he realizes as his real being and existence. All of us have got these three gunas, Rajoguna, Tamoguna and Sattva-guna. So here, when the devotion of the right kind is developed, we have been told that we will be able to transcend the lower and get fixed in the higher. This is called jnana or moksha. The knowledge of the Atman grants him unchanging and eternal bliss and peace. It is then the higher bhakti, which is termed parabhakti, dawns in him. This is the summit of God realization. With jnana as the background, the devotee beholds the entire manifested universe as the supreme image of his beloved Lord. All creatures, beings and things in the universe are looked upon by him as the very forms of his Lord. He feels and sees the Lord's presence everywhere. Oneness of life, oneness of all existence becomes now the keynote of his vision. There is no limit to his ecstasy, is born of his consciousness of unity and oneness with the Lord. He veritably rolls, swims, gambols in the infinite ocean of joy. Blessed, a million times blessed is the devotee who reaches this highest peak of God realization. So jnana is there in the background, because otherwise it will be centered on a particular object. We may unknowingly limit. Papa's beautiful quotation is, hanging on to an external prop in spiritual matters is a hindrance, because the center of interest gets cramped and localized, denying the flexibility for expansion. We start with an image, okay, but we should be able to move, but we get stuck there. We will not be able to see him everywhere. So that is why he says transcend. And Mataji beautifully explains, Papa has looked at the whole Saguna Swarup as one entity and also covered Nirguna Swarup. Nirguna Swarup means, jnana. And the whole thing is Saguna. Not one a small deity or a person which is limited, whereas he is unlimited, We have to do a lot of thinking, otherwise they do not percolate into our mind. Let us speak of the highest type of bhakti today. It is called Ananya Bhakti. Here you have no higher object to love than God. He is the supreme object of your love, adoration, devotion, remembrance. Remembrance of him as such is Ananya Chintan. Exclusive, that is called Ananya Chintan. Nothing else comes in our mind except him. When we say him, he is not a person. If he is a person, we are unknowingly limiting him. We have to use some word. That is why in Inquest of God, before the chapter starts, he defines who is Ram Because every time he cannot say, Ram is the mysterious power. Every time if we repeat the mysterious power, we will not be able to understand. So he gave a name, Ram. So his name stands for the mysterious power, which is covering everything, which covers every object, which covers everything in the world, in the cosmos. To those who always remain absorbed in my meditation, and to those ever harmonious, I bring full peace and security. Such a bhakta is very dear to God. These are all words from Bhagavad Gita. He finds joy in remembering Him, taking His name and glorifying Him. He looks upon God as everything and all in all. He remembers God for all the 24 hours without break, because he finds that the remembrance gives him the highest happiness. Prahlad, Dhruva, Narada, Ambarisha, and several other saints were bhaktas of this highest order. Even if such bhaktas live in different situations, conditions, and circumstances, their heart remains continuously in tune with God. Let your heart continuously pine for God, just as a miser does for gold. The miser's love for gold is greater than all else in the world. Mother, father, wife, children, brothers are all nothing to him. What a man loves most, that he thinks of. A true devotee looks upon God as his all in all. His devotion to God is complete, thorough, integral, all comprehensive. A devotee's love and devotion enable him to remember God constantly. He has no need to struggle. Automatically his mind dwells on God. He is the origin, no? So we have to have some clarity on the word God. Otherwise, all these things become academic. We are just hearing. The power because of which the words are being uttered, the power because of which the words are being heard. That power, mysterious power. So whenever we are left with off hours, pause moments, we must start thinking the power because of which thoughts are arising. The power because of which everyone knows that he or she is. We have been asked to concentrate upon this. Narada says in his Bhakti Sutra that you should have Parama Prem, the highest love for God. Many persons are struggling to remember God, and they find it difficult because they have greater love for the things of the world than for God. To remember Him for 2 or 3 hours a day is not bhakti. Bhakti means unceasing remembrance of God. We are nowhere near this bhakti, Our mind says we have bhakti when we go to a temple, when we go to an ashram, when we see an object, that's all. Then after that we are back to square one. So he says, Bhakti means unceasing remembrance. That can come only through divine grace. What should you do to get the intense love for Ananya Bhakti? You must pray to Him for grace so that you may remember Him constantly. By your will you cannot do it. Before Ramdas's spiritual quest began, non-remembrance of God did not cause any pain to him. After God's grace came, he felt that forgetfulness was misery. Some clues for us, He felt as if he was put on fire if he forgot him for a single moment. The question is whether you should have any preparation necessary for becoming fit for His grace. If God says you must do sadhana to receive grace, it means you are like a laborer earning wages. There is no question of such earning here. His grace alone must purify you. Pray to Him, cry out to Him, then He will come. He will not say you have not done sadhana, you have not purified yourself. The story goes, a humble servant living in a small hut with his family once went to the king and prayed to him to visit his humble cottage. The king agreed, but the cottage was very small. It was not clean. It was in no way fit for the king's reception. The king ordered his minister to get the house thoroughly cleaned, properly equipped, decorated. After getting everything ready, the king paid his visit. So you invite God to reveal Himself in your heart. He makes it pure and then reveals Himself. All that you have to do is to call Him, just as a child calls its mother. You must entirely forget everything else when you call Him. Many ardent devotees have in this way got the darshan of God. The only thing needed is to cry to God to come and save you. That is to absorb you in His being. And now let us see what Mataji says. Punnu is singing abhangs from beloved Papa's Prem Sudha outside the Bhajan hall, in Papa's room. Mataji is listening to the renderings. Mataji said, how beautiful are Papa's compositions. They deal with both Nirguna and Saguna Swarup. That is why perhaps they are not always easy to understand. I had always wondered why the songs composed by other saints like Tukaram, Namdev, Eknath and others are so easy and simple in expression and can be easily understood. Whereas Papa's compositions are not so simple. We have to hear them several times before we can imbibe their true meaning. Shashikala. It may be because there is more than one meaning in every line composed by Papa. Mataji. Yes, that is because Papa's vision encompassed the whole universe. And in his compositions, Papa has looked at the whole Saguna Swarup as one entity and also covered Nirguna Swarup. He has sung of the truth which cannot be understood at first reading. Sri Ram. Is it not possible, Mataji, that many of the popular compositions of various saints were composed by them during their sadhana period, whereas Papa's compositions were mainly after he had attained Sakshatkar? Mataji, yes, that is also possible. Yet the abhangs of Tukaram and others carry such a wealth of love and devotion that they must have attained at least the first of the Sakshatkars. Now you are familiar with Papa's composition because they are being sung here practically every day and each one has got a nice tune. Bhaktas are a class by themselves. They can be easily identified, not by appearance, but by their behavior, by their attitude. Bhaktas are very loving to others. Another clue for all of us. We are checking up, are we really Bhaktas? Bhaktas are very loving to others. They are perfectly peaceful. They serve others selflessly. Their life is dedicated to God. They try to see God in everything and therefore their life will be a great blessing to humanity. They keep chanting God's name constantly and thus remember Him. Because of that, they are always happy. Now, Pujya Swamiji says, he has extracted from Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Kapila said, the discipline of devotion is recognized as manifold according to the ways of approach and attitude of mind towards it. Men's attitude of mind varies according to the diversity of their natural characteristics. A man who is given to anger and views me, says the Lord, as distinct from himself, and who practices devotion to me with a mind full of violence, hypocrisy, jealousy, is a devotee of tamasic type. He who worships me through an image, etc., as distinct from himself, with a view to acquiring objects of senses, fame, power, is a devotee of rajasic type. He who adores me as distinct from himself, aiming at the eradication of his sins, or with the intention of offering his action to the Supreme, or again with the feeling that it is his duty to worship me, is a devotee of the Sattvic type. The distinguishing character of unqualified Bhakti Yoga is spoken of as the uninterrupted flow of mind stream towards me at the mere mention of my virtues, like that of the waters of the Ganga towards the ocean. That means always thinking about. Ganga is flowing toward the ocean. So mind is always thinking about him, about him, about him. Nothing else. Not asking for anything. This should be combined with motiveless and unremitting love to me, the Supreme Person, dwelling in the hearts of all. My devotees accept not, in exchange for my service, even the 5 forms of final beatitude, namely, residence in my divine realm, enjoying my powers, living in my presence, possessing a form similar to mine, absorption into my being, even when they are offered to them by me. They will not accept anything. All these things, even when the Lord offers, it will not be accepted. The devotees thereby transcend the 3 gunas and become qualified for my state without any effort. By devoutly performing one's duties in a disinterested spirit, by following every day a course of regular worship involving no distraction of life and actuated by no worldly desire, by beholding, touching, adoring, extolling and bowing to my images, by regarding all living beings as my own manifestations, by resorting to patience and dispassion, by showing great respect to great exalted souls, commiserating with the afflicted, behaving in a friendly manner with one's equals, by practicing non-violence, truthfulness, non-thieving, continence, possessing things not exceeding the bare necessities of life, external and internal purity, contentment, undergoing penance, study of sacred texts, meditation on God, by hearing spiritual discourses and chanting the divine names, and by unity of mind, speech and body, fellowship with holy men and absence of egotism, one's mind thus engaged in activities intended to please me gets thoroughly purified. He conceives a liking for me without any effort the moment he hears somebody talking about my virtues. So many clues he has given. By resorting to patience, dispassion, by showing great respect to exalted souls, commiserating with the afflicted, behaving in a friendly manner with one's equals, by practicing non-violence, ahimsa, truthfulness, non-thieving, continence, possessing things not exceeding the bare necessities of life, external and internal purity, contentment, undergoing penance, study of sacred texts, meditation on God, by hearing spiritual discourses and chanting the divine names, and by unity of mind, speech and body, fellowship with holy men, absence of egotism, one's mind thus engaged in activities intended to please me, gets thoroughly purified. The path of devotion or bhakti is simple, easy, harmless. You turn to God within you like a child to his mother. You offer yourself to Him, pray to Him to guide you. Once you surrender yourself to God, He takes charge of you. You are ever safe. God holds you as a mother holds her child. You are no longer separate from God. There is no fear of a fall for you. All of us know very well that it is natural to love our mother, father and other relations. It is this same love that has to be directed to God. When we say we love our parents, if we try to understand the word love, probably that might help us. To love God. He is with us. He has been with us. Still we don't love Him. We love other things, No. It's alright if we love other things as God is okay. So Papa is asking us, or all Mahatmas are asking us to ponder over this, deeply, deeply. Let us see what Swami Ramtirtha says about bhakti. How beloved is the word love. Everybody must have a lover, as the saying goes. In some instances, love or bhakti is the only desideratum. There are some noble souls who gladly sacrifice anything and everything for the sake of divine love. Let us try to discover the fountainhead of love. The ideal bhaktas like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or Bunyan are distinguished for their unusual trance or raptures of prayers. And it goes without saying that divine love raised in intensity to such a pitch means transcending all ideas of shame, conformity, or the world, and exemption from the bondage of little self. Even those who have been blessed with an experience of love directed towards lower objects will testify to the apparent paradox that highest love transcends the idea of beloved and the lover. Thus, undeniably is love identical with religion in the above sense. That means absence of otherness. Transcending the love, the highest love transcends the idea of beloved and the lover. A man on reading Naisami's Layla and Majnu cut out the picture of Layla from the book and was hugging to his breast, kissing it ever so fondly. Why? I have fallen in love with Layla. He replies, fool, it is not worthwhile to take away poor Majnun's sweetheart. You may have his burning love, but as to Lady Lore, having a living one of your own, Bhaktas of India, you are all very ready to take up the sweethearts of Gopis and Chaitanya. But how many of you have the pure, flaming passion of Gopikas and Gauranga? You will be the dancing deer of the sweet cowherd when you see him with the divine love in the Chandala, in the thief, in the sinner, in the stranger, and in all, and not confine him to mere stone images. Bhakti is not crying or begging or a negative condition. It is an indescribable sense of equality, beaming sweetness, and divine recklessness. It is the seeing of all in all we see. It is seeing your own self in where your eyes fall. It is to realize that all is beauty and I am that. Tattvamasi, or that thou art. Emulate the qualities Bhaktottamas epitomize, says Swami Chidanji Maharaj. The human individual soul should rise to the highest height it is capable of. Try to be as much like God as it is possible for you to be within the limits of your own capacity. Each one has a ceiling limit. And God only expects each one of us to do our ultimate best and leave it in His hands. But if we do not try to do our ultimate best, if we fail to do our ultimate best, then we fail. God does not expect us to become a Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. God does not expect us to become a Chaitanya Gauranga Mahaprabhu, a Mirabai, a Prahlad or a Dhruva or a Markandeya or a Bhagirada. Having lived before us, they have left footprints on the sands of time. Therefore, try to emulate. We may not be able to duplicate them in scale and quality. We may not be able to, but we can try to emulate. That is the very meaning of idealism. We keep a lofty ideal, try to emulate that ideal. Try to be as non-violent as Mahatma Gandhi. Try to be as self-effacing as Vinoba Bhave. Try to be as brave as Meera. Trying to be like an ideal, we said before us, is the hallmark of a sadhaka. Never lower your ideal. Even if you cannot approximate it in every way, say, I shall try my best. Do not compromise. Do not dilute your spirituality. Aim for the stars. Swami Krishnanji used to say, it is better to aim at a lion and miss it than to aim at a jackal and hit it. Try to become like God. Overnight one does not become a God. Growing into God nature is not a miracle. It is not a revolution. In rare exceptional cases, 1 in a million it may be. Otherwise it is an evolutionary process. Slow, steady, by day, by night, even as the petals of a flower bud gradually unfold in the silence of the night, unfelt, unobserved, unseen by man. One grows into divinity over a period of time through patient effort, unremitting, persevering effort. Through sincerity, earnestness. Through longing, through deep yearning, through such much prayer, supplication at the feet of God. Vigilant among the heedless, wakeful among the slumbering, diligent among the indolent, ever actively striving, climbing up step by step among the lethargic and the lazy who rushed by the wayside. The yogi, the sadhaka and the devotee of God make their life fulfill in attainment. This is called sadhana, this is called spiritual life. All these words of Mahatmas, different interpretations are there, but if we try to understand them, it becomes very, very clear to us that what is emphasized is exclusiveness. And we don't pray for anything else. We only pray for making us aware of His presence, which is there, about which we are not aware. So he says we have to employ different methods. Crying, weeping, appealing. Why are you making me unaware of your presence when you are already, when you are there, and you make me aware intellectually that without you I don't exist? When you make me to deal with so many vyavaharas, you make me to forget about you at all. When I go to the puja room, when I go to an ashram, when I go to a temple, I might remember you for a short time. Even then I treat you as separate. I don't treat you as an indwelling spirit. That is why I am missing you. I know that. I am missing you because I have been habituated at conceiving the idea that you are outside. In spite of so many satsang, so many words, so many nama chanting, still you chose to make me ignorant of your presence within me. Please. You took me to the spiritual preceptors. You make me to read so many books. You make me to have the darshan of Mahatmas. You make me to hear about the inspiring life and mission of Mirabai, Tukaram, Namdev, Dhruva, Prahlada, all these Bhaktottamas. But with all that, I still stand where I have been. It is high time. You must come out and make me aware of your presence within me. Such type of intense prayer. Any prayer originated by ourselves. That is very important. All these Bhaktottamas could scale the height because they originated the prayer. In what all forms, what all ways they have explained. If you go through the Purandradas Kirtana, if you go through Tyaga Brahmam's Kirtan, anywhere, Tukaram's, we get a glimpse of it. And they were tested by the Lord by subjecting them to go through so many problems. They were stripped of everything. Even then they did not compromise on bhakti, reliance on God. So going through such biographical sketches of those masters, we should not leave it like that. Immediately we should think God is providing me. I am complaining about God, but God is providing me all these things. Still I am not learning. The teacher or the text is facilitating us to improve our knowledge about the world. We cannot accuse, but if we don't go through, if we don't absorb, if we don't assimilate the text, we will not be able to get a pass. Similarly, God is placing before us everything. So that we have no room for complaints. So far we have been thinking that He is keeping Himself inside and making us to go through this. No. He has placed everything before us also. He makes us to make at least a short visit to some spiritual institution, no? He arranges everything beautifully. We had been to Rishikesh. Now Rishikesh is like any other town. God prompts so many people to come there. Many of them are given only the idea that it's a tourist spot. On the day of Param Pujya Krishna Swamiji Maharaj's birth centenary, on 25th, morning there were some rituals, and in the evening we were all taken in a boat across the Ganga. Then everybody was chanting, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare. Touching the Mother Ganga, everything is okay. Then the Ganga Arati. But at the same time, we saw so many people are there. They were also doing this boating exercise. But they were in a different realm. Their purpose, God did not give them this. So we cannot blame God. When we go to a place of pilgrim, suppose we train our mind to eke out the maximum benefit out of that program, visit. Then we find, yes, everything is there. And when the Ganga Arati is performed so beautifully, and we find when the Ganga Arati was performed, so many tourists were also looking at it. And unknowingly, they used to do like this. So even then, probably they may not realize. Maybe go to Rishikesh or Haridwar or such places where Ganga is flowing in her crystal clear purity. So we cannot blame him. He is providing everything to us in the form of Satsang. What are the three things? Satsang, Satsang, solitude and Sattvic diet. At least, we all here who are reading it, this should be imprinted in our heart. For developing bhakti towards him, Ananya bhakti towards him, these three things are very, very, very important. Satsang, solitude, Sattvic diet. Now when we go back to In Quest of God, you will find the same thing, Papa was constantly referring to Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Light of Asia, New Testament, Gandhiji's books, Swami Ramtirtha's books, Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. These are all satsang. And throughout his itinerant yatra, he was resorting to solitude whenever God provides an opportunity. And why say sattvic diet? No diet, So with that he was able to go through the whole thing. That is why he could declare. So, rest of the portion we will take it up tomorrow. Enough for all of us to think about what we have read. But even if we have forgotten these three, four words, Ananya Chintan, the Satsang, solitude, Sattvic diet, emulating, thinking about the life and mission, inspiring life and mission of Bhaktotamas, emulating, and the Saguna and Nirguna to be combined. That means we don't limit the Almighty's presence to a particular form, transcending the form. And constant appealing. It is not because of our sadhana, but because of our inner urge. intense inner urge. He says, don't compromise the ideal. Even if we are unable to live up to the ideal, we will not compromise. Somehow I have to reach there. Somehow I have to reach there. So let this be always in our mind. We are trying to understand Papa's approach to Bhakti. Bhakti means a united attempt to direct all the forces of the heart, intellect and will. No? Very clear. No? The intellect, it will start interpreting, but a united attempt. Heart, intellect and will. Feelings, convictions, or jnana and love toward the attainment of the all-inclusive, all-comprehensive truth of your existence and the world existence. Let us all try to assimilate, absorb as much as we can, so that we will be able to derive the fullest benefit from the in-depth study of In Quest of God. Papa is providing us this month's vision, where he brings out the words of so many masters on this same subject, Bhakti. Initially, Bhakti is centered on a form, doesn't matter. But we have to transcend, and the Kapila has also listed out what are the qualities that we have to develop. He says, patience, dispassion, becoming sensitive to the afflicted and suffering, behaving in a friendly manner, practicing non-violence, truthfulness, non-thieving, continence, possessing things not exceeding the bare necessities of life, external and internal purity, contentment, undergoing penance, is all, study of sacred texts, meditation on God, hearing spiritual discourses, chanting divine names, and by unity of mind, speech and body, fellowship with holy men, absence of egotism, one's mind thus engaged in activities intended to please me, gets thoroughly purified. So many clues have been given to us about how to develop this bhakti. Ananya bhakti. Exclusive. Let us all pray from the bottom of the heart to move towards this great ideal. And we have In Quest of God as the testimony. At no time and nowhere Papa was perplexed, or Papa was upset, or Papa was feeling insecure. Even if it comes in a trice, it goes away. So to try to understand In Quest of God, He is now providing an opportunity for all of us to know the real form of bhakti. We will take up the rest of the portion tomorrow. Hari Om. Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om. Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om. Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Hari Om to everybody.